Refugee mothers separated at border to sue Trump administration for $3 million each. Sacramento, California. Like thousands of Central American parents seeking asylum in the United States, Patricia panicked when, after she and her son crossed the Rio Grande into Texas last year, U.S. border agents took the boy away. For weeks, though they were eventually reunited, Patricia isn't ready to put the past behind her. She wants the U.S. Every moment that I think about it makes me cry, said Patricia, who asked that she and her son be identified only by their middle names because she fears retaliation. To have us separate, Patricia and her lawyer, Maggie Krell, a former California Deputy Attorney General who specialized in human trafficking, are set to argue that the U.S. government intended to inflict emotional distress on families by separating them. They plan to make, though it is far from clear they will prevail. The parents argue that the separations and the silence around the fate of their children in 2018 were part of a systemic campaign of psychological intimidation by the Trump administration to frighten others away from entering America. Slideshow by Photo Services. There's been ongoing public debate on the purpose of family separations, and last year a federal judge halted them. But Krell and others, if policy doesn't work, if lobbying doesn't work, if press doesn't work, oftentimes government having to pay for the wrongs it has committed is the best way to get the government's attention, said Eric Walsh, a lawyer with the Washington law firm Arnold & Porter, which is spearheading the claims as part of its pro bono work on immigration issues. The government clearly intended to inflict emotional distress. There is a pretty good, this is just a start. Walsh said that, though government data show about 2,700 children may have been separated from parents or guardians, he expects no more than a few hundred emotional distress suits to be filed. Some parents have, this is just a start, Walsh said. The first group of claims was filed directly with U.S. Customs and Border Protection and other agencies this year, a required administrative step. The first lawsuit, U.S. Customs and Border Protection declined to comment on the cases, citing pending litigation. Patricia said she is bringing the claim in part because there are many mothers suffering, and she and Alessandro continue to struggle with the effects of their separation. She said she left, I can't forget everything that happened, she said. I carry it with me. For nearly 3 weeks after they were taken into custody by U.S. Border Patrol agents in June 2018, Patricia had no idea what had happened to her son, she said. She and authorities took her to Port Isabel detention facility near Brownsville, Texas, with no access to lawyers, no money for phone calls and no answers to her pleas for information, she said. Rumors swirled that it was about 20 days before she heard Alessandro's voice again. Patricia received an I was wanting to cry and scream, but I made myself strong so I wouldn't make him feel bad, Patricia said. He would ask me, after that call, she didn't have the funds to contact him again. She couldn't eat or Krell spent 15 years as a state prosecutor before leaving to become lead counsel at Planned Parenthood affiliates of California last year, just as the government introduced a zero-tolerance policy at the border, under which those apprehended crossing into the U.S. between ports of entry were criminally charged and separated from their children. Krell said it's like a void. She asked her friend Clara Levers, a current California Deputy Attorney General, to take vacation time and come as a translator. But despite the it's like a void, she said. The fact that Krell and Levers discovered that border agents had not recorded Patricia and Alessandro as related and she was on track to be removed from the country without him. He was considered and U.S. authorities had already sent others back to home countries without their kids, Levers said. Ultimately, they did not care about that link, Levers said, and it became a race to halt the wheels of Patricia's removal. With no record associating mother and son, Krell was able to find the boy only by using a list of alien registration numbers given to immigrants when they are detained. She located Patricia and Krell drove to the facility where the boy was being held in a shelter with about 100 other kids, but authorities there wouldn't let her see him without an appointment. As Krell and he said, "Mom, I am leaving now with you," said Patricia, a petite 27-year-old who shares apple cheeks with her son. But they didn't give him. It took another week to have Alessandro released, Krell said. Once free, they are now living with Patricia's brother, and she is working legally at a Korean fast food chain. Alessandro anxiety persists. But she is anxious, and sometimes her mind goes cold, a blankness that leaves her disoriented, she said. Alessandro, hell wake up in the middle of the night crying, she said. And then hell turn. Despite the anguish many separated parents face, their claims of emotional distress may be hard to win, said Gregory Sisk, a law professor at the University of St. Thomas in Minnesota. Anytime you sue the federal government in these types of cases, it's an uphill climb, Sisk said. You'd have to show. Sisk said the lawsuits are worthwhile but largely unprecedented for their focus on emotional distress. Congress passed. It has since been used mostly by individuals, though there have been a few significant, mostly unsuccessful, group claims, including from property owners flooded by Hurricane Katrina, who claimed that the failure of government-built levees was to blame. But in February, after her experience helping Patricia and Alessandro, Krell said, she believes there is an absolute vacuum of information around detainees that is part of a heartless policy that falls under the scope of the law. The more I've gotten to know Patricia and Alessandro, the more repulsive it is that this is how they were treated, Krell said. She is not that. Copyright 2019 Los Angeles Times. Visit the Los Angeles Times ed. Distributed by
Raindrop, drop top smoking, no cooking the hot pot. Fucking on your bitch, yeah, that. Looking up, open the park pot.